Sustainable Development Goals are inextricably linked. They were designed with the purpose in mind. The realization of one goal and target relies on several others. In this strong interaction, Goal 11 plays a fundamental role as catalyst for the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and other key global development agendas. This is because city acts as a visible and sometimes invisible string that connects all other goals together. Their density and economies of agglomeration link energy, economy, environment, science, technology, and social and economic outcomes. These interrelations are important to formulate integrated policies needed to achieve sustainable development. When we work at the urban level, it is important to include people, location, and city condition to ensure that no place is left behind. This is both a moral, operational imperative necessary for the realization of human rights and for ensuring that all inhabitants take advantage of the transformative potential that cities offer. For this to happen, we need a better understanding of how urban actions interact with other goals, how they reinforce each other, and how interlinkages inform balanced decision-making. This knowledge helps us to recognize necessary trade-off and negative interactions to avoid inefficiencies and reduce or minimize negative relation. It also helps us to maximize positive relation. We know, for instance, that through addressing the challenges of urbanization, we can advance Goal 5 on gender equality, promote Goal 16 on good governance, and strengthen Goal 17 on the means of implementation. Successful implementation of the 2030 Agendas for Sustainable Development Goal will need awareness raising, will need policy alignment, will need collective action, will need priority setting, financing, technology, capacity building, and monitoring. Distinguished guests and friends, this side event is extremely pertinent as it is provide us with the platform to discuss the effective implementation, monitoring, and reporting of Goal 11 after 3 years of implementation. SDG 11 must be connected to the new urban agenda since both present a tremendous and timely domestic opportunities for government to integrate their economic, social, and environmental policies in urban affairs. The implementation of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the new urban agenda can take different form and different shape according to different realities and capacities. Nevertheless, designing the implementation plans should rest on fundamental principles that reflect a broad shift of policy thinking, making, and implementation. It should inspire a multi-stakeholder approach, be people-centered, gender-sensitive, open, and participatory. The analysis of the voluntary country reports demonstrate that various governments are defining and adjusting national plans, budget, and strategies to better respond to global agenda. This alignment is a first critical step that provides sense of direction and reinforce ownership. We encourage increased involvement of regional and local government in this process. Second, a second critical step for effective implementation of the urban agenda is to set up an enabling environment. This can take the form of policy framework at different levels of government supported by participatory mechanism. A set of interrelated conditions such as legal, organizational, fiscal, informational, political, and cultural requirements needs to be recognized by countries to better influence the capacity development of various development actors. A third critical step is the financial means of implementation. Sustainable urban development cannot be achieved without improving financing and developing innovative mechanisms for effective implementation. A combined set of interventions, including the mobilization of domestic and international resources, technology development and transfer, capacity development, particularly at the local level, is key for this success and also the key for this process. Effective monitoring, after we implement, there will be effective monitoring, evaluation, and reporting is also crucial. We need to report what is right, we need to report what is wrong, so that we can share the best practices with other cities. 3 years after the adoption of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we know that data and metrics are essential for development goals to be met. They enable national and local governments to make correct decisions on the best policies to adopt and assist in tracking changes while systematically documenting their performance at the outcomes level. This is fundamental towards achieving higher level of urban prosperity and sustainable urban development for all. Yet, despite considerable progress in data collection and analysis, entire demographic group of people are not being counted, an important aspect of people's life and city solution, city condition are still not measured. For people, this can lead to the denial of the basic right, and for the city, the likelihood that well-informed decisions are not taken and therefore not harnessing the transformative power of urbanization. In close collaboration with the wider UN family and other partners, UN Habitat is refining approaches and techniques of data collection, analysis and compilation of information for indicators of the urban dimensions of the SDGs, particularly those with a spatial component. We acknowledge the efforts made by civil society, grassroots and informal settlement organizations, academia and other stakeholders who are involved in citizen-driven approaches to data collection and analysis. For example, the recent 3D and also the recent 3 days capacity building workshop on monitoring human settlement indicators is a step in the right direction. Strengthening partnership between national and local government and stakeholders is the best way to produce rich data relevant to monitoring and to upscaling future implementation strategies in advancing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The adoption of the City Prosperity Initiative, or CPI, as a single monitoring framework for the urban dimension of the SDG and the new urban agenda is also very important consideration. Currently, the CPI is being implemented in more than 400 cities across the world, producing this aggregated data in key dimensions and indicators of urban development, as well as aggregated values through City Index. City is the engine of growth. City is the hub of innovation and creativity. City is also great usage of energy. City is also great produce of carbon emission. Urbanization is the transformative force and also a tool for urban challenges. So let me conclude by saying that cities are the cornerstone of prosperity too. Measurement on basic needs, essential public goods, tangible and intangible assets, urban risks and conditions, and existing plans and policies are fundamental to determine how all human beings, men, women, and children can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling life. It is a precondition for achieving sustainable development. Let us do it together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Maimuna, for these words of welcome, but also some introductory important remarks for this discussion. Before I give the floor to the first speaker, I would like to remind you that we will have at the end, depending on the time, around 20-25 minutes for some questions and answers. You see your micro, you have a small button close to that. When we will open the floor for that, I will kindly ask you to push a button, but only at that moment, and you will see a green light coming. Based on this green light, we will have an order for you to speak. So thank you for that. Let me, as it was mentioned before, introduce to you the Ambassador Sylvia Miller, who is the Austrian President of the Council of the European Union. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting us to present to you the European Union and its way to implement SDG 11. Thank you very much for this occasion. We will do it together as a pair, the Council and the Commission together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me start with one thing which is of utmost importance. The European Union is completely committed to the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs and had been part of the process right from the beginning. We regard ourselves as dedicated actors in order to fulfill the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs, which are of crucial importance for the development of our world as a whole. Many of the agenda's goals had been already linked to the different EU policies and to the different strategies. The EU acted on several strands in order to incorporate these goals into its policies and programs internally as well as globally. And SDG 11 and the urban dimension of the 2030 Agenda is a priority for the EU response to sustainable development. How do we do that? We have on the one hand as main action framework regarding SDG 11 the European cohesion policy. This is the framework for us. The overarching principle of sustainable urban development is at the heart of the cohesion policy. It contributes to the realization of most of the SDGs within Europe, leveraging around 650 billion euros during the period 2014 to 2020. The policy is aligned especially with SDG 10, which aims at reducing inequalities within and among countries, but has a major focus on the implementation of SDG 11 and the urban dimension of the 2030 Agenda. What does this cohesion policy do? The policy is drawing special attention to sustainable development through the idea of localizing the global goals, underlining that cities are key drivers for sustainable development and significant actors in the SDG implementation process. In this perspective, cities and their relation with their territorial context are considered part of a solution to economic, environmental, and social challenges. Cohesion policy is answering the local needs of every city's neighborhood and local communities. Just in the period 2014 to 2020, more than 100 billion euros are dedicated to urban areas, among which 30 billion euros leverage are directly managed by municipal authorities to implement projects. This illustration gives you just an idea how many development strategies are developed through the cohesion policy. Just to give you an idea, there are more than 1,000 initiatives there which are covered, just to give you an idea about that. Cohesion policy is one strand we are following within the European Union. The others are the so-called voluntary commitments. There are 3 of them. The one is the urban agenda for the EU, which had been adopted only recently and was developed as a key delivery instrument of SDG 11 and of the new urban agenda within the Union. What is it? What does it mean? That is a governance mechanism that was designed for cities to have their say in policy making. You will get more details concerning that by my colleague afterwards. The second commitment is the so-called International Urban Cooperation Program. That includes a lot of projects with key partner countries in Africa and in the Americas to support sustainable urban development by city pairings. And the third commitment deals with the question how to define city. It's quite fascinating to see that there has not yet been developed a definition of city. And this is, I think, really crucial and fundamental, that we all know what we are talking about. So, what will be the next steps of the European Union? We are waiting at the moment for the reflection paper, which will be elaborated by the Commission. The Council asked the Commission to prepare a paper showing how the SDGs should be implemented within Europe, and here a special emphasis will be put on SDG 11, of course. And only recently the Council has adopted Council conclusions. Here it's still written it will be, but hooray, hooray, we have already got this adoption. And the important thing is this conclusion deals with European cooperation with cities and local authorities in third countries. And it emphasizes that the SDGs can be achieved only by the partnership with the cities, with the municipalities. And that had been especially highlighted and emphasized by the Council in their conclusions. So now I may pass the word to my colleague Thomas. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Does it work? Yes, it's connected. Good. My name is Thomas de Béthune. I work in the European Commission, and actually I worked on a daily basis on the implementation of the SDGs and the new urban agenda. since actually I'm helping cities to implement the cohesion policy that was just mentioned by Mrs. Ambassador, and I'm animating the urban agenda for the EU. What is actually the urban agenda for the EU? It aims, and it has been said, for a governance tool that was designed in 2016 for cities to have their say in policy making, but also in implementing a better urban policy. It has 12 priority themes that includes climate adaptation, digital transition, urban poverty, just to name 3 of them, and it is developing concrete action plans, proposing concrete solutions in order to promote improvements on 3 strands: the legislations, the funding, and the knowledge. But it may also extend to policies and governance. This approach takes also into account the diversity of cities and their wider territorial context in order to contribute to the Union's objective, which is in the treaty, in our common treaty of the European Union, the territorial cohesion. Concretely, what does it mean? We have a method of implementation which is based on following the partnership principle, aiming to involve all relevant actors, multi-level, multi-stakeholder, multi-level governance approach, which on the table we've got the EU, the European Union, the member state, the cities, the NGOs, private companies. No one is leading, no one is the leader of it. We are all having the same role, and we try to find consensus on the best actions to identify. We are facilitating the process, obviously, to make it happen and to reach the result. As of this year, 22 member states and 84 cities are involved in this process. 12 partnerships are running, 3 action plans have been finalized, and we will have around, I would say, I hope, 10 action plans approved by the end of this year, and even 2 new partnerships launched in 2019 around the thematic of security and cultural heritage. This map, just to reflect on the fact that we are covering the whole European Union and the variety and range of participants, overall the EU, for each of the partnerships. You might, maybe for some of you, recognize your own cities. What is the impact so far? Launched in 2016, so it means that we are 2 years after. We have noticed that there was an impact on policy making, which is quite positive. Indeed, we have a greater cooperation and dialogue between national and local authorities, thanks to this mechanism, and because we are around the table for each of these thematics a couple of times a year, discussing, trying to identify the bottlenecks, oriented towards solution, and this leads automatically to getting closer and discussing, being solution-oriented. And cities are also very willing to participate and contribute by bringing ideas and designing solutions for urban areas and citizens. They commit into the implementation of the actions. And at the European Commission also, we are taking into account these results to improve our own actions. We have reinforced our internal coordination. The urban agenda is feeding into the work, into the agenda, the work agenda of the Commission. We have developed territorial impact assessment for regulations. We have also developed a one-stop shop for website for the cities. And we have, as mentioned, funding which is dedicated to cities. So we are earmarking money that is not managed by national or regional level, but by cities themselves directly. They select the projects aligned with their own strategies. What about the international dimension in this? Actually, the urban agenda for the EU, as mentioned, is one of the voluntary commitments that we took in 2016 at the Habitat 3 conference in Quito as part of the new urban agenda implementation plan. The action plans of the urban agenda for the EU have been prepared and actually take into account the new urban agenda. Each of the actions that we identify, we link them concretely with the new urban agenda objectives and proposals. So you understand well, this urban agenda for the EU is a key delivery mechanism for this new urban agenda. In the same way, SDG 11 has to be understood through an interlinkages, and it implies this agenda also foresees the need for an integrated approach to be used to tackle complex urban challenges and transversal issues through policy. We believe the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in Europe is not only a question of funds, but it's also about having the right policy instruments, knowledge and governance mechanism. The Commission believes that the urban agenda for the EU can significantly improve the daily lives of millions of citizens. The reason is that many EU policies have strong urban dimension, and that we therefore have to work more on urban matters, to work more with cities, and also to rely more on cities when it comes to the implementation of our policies. For example, 70% of the EU legislation is implemented by cities, 70%. 55% of the EU funds are spent in cities. And just to illustrate, in conclusion, 7 out of the 10 priorities of this Commission, of this European Commission College, has an urban dimension. It means the whole or nearly the large majority of our priorities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to the Ambassador and to the Director of the Urban Policy, the Coordinator. I'm going to give the floor now to the Honorable Minister from Mexico, Rosario Robles, who I think is going to speak in Spanish, isn't it? Yes. So if you can prepare for her to speak in Spanish, and for those that need translation, to be ready. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Muy buenas tardes, estimada Directora Ejecutiva, colegas. México ratifica una vez más su compromiso con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible y con la nueva Agenda Urbana. Y desde luego con el vínculo absolutamente necesario entre esta nueva Agenda Urbana y los Objetivos del Desarrollo Sostenible y la perspectiva transversal que debe imperar en ellos para poder concretar la agenda aprobada en Quito, Ecuador. No solo se trata del objetivo número 11, sino muchos de estos objetivos para que podamos establecer una dimensión urbana y para que podamos realmente concretar dichos objetivos en el marco de los espacios urbanos de las ciudades, independientemente de su tamaño y su dimensión. ¿Qué ha hecho México en estos casi últimos 6 años para poder llevar a cabo este proceso de transformación?
And Director Penchina, we firmly believe that housing can be a fundamental element towards attaining the SDGs. So when we assume this responsibility and acknowledges the impact that Infonavit can have, I would like to acknowledge the Executive Director of UN Habitat, because the main partnership we've had has been UN Habitat, and it has been such an honor for our team at Infonavit and our government to work with such a fantastic group of professionals. Pablo Baglione is here, Eduardo is also here that leads this effort. From the very first moment that we established this relationship with UN Habitat, I think we have changed, and we are carrying out different research studies on sustainable development. I'd like to acknowledge Minister Robles, that we've been very, very active ratifying the urban agenda in Quito, also very active in the implementation aspect and understanding how we can meet these SDGs. Since they were formulated, it was really exciting to see, regardless of where we were, we would all have a job or something to do until 2030. I think we all want to eradicate poverty. We all want to end hunger. We all want to have fairer societies. We all agree on these targets.